Alrighty, you guys voted. It's been 24 hours, and here's the results. Majority of you want Legacy of Kain, so let's do it. Legacy of Kain lore. What the fuck is the Dark Eden? One of my more interested zones in Legacy of Kain is it's the only zone that is man corrupted, not the pillars corrupted. So let's get into it. The Dark Eden. Now, it is more of a opposite of the Garden of Eden. You know, the Garden of Life. This is the Garden of Death, the Garden of Corruption. All living things, plants, animals, people that are inside the Dark Eden gets mutated and twisted into horrifying monsters. Even their blood becomes poisonous, like to those of the vampires. If they were to ever ingest it, they would definitely die. Now, this pervasion of nature, this pervasion of the world, is not natural. This isn't magically made from the pillars. This is actually made from 3 pillar guardians. These pillar guardians, the one of states, the one of nature, and the one of energy. Those 3 pillars combine together to make this terrible, terrible discovery of the Dark Eden. Whatever their goal was, it's not exactly sure what, because Anacroth, the alchemist, the guardian of the states, he seemed to be the one in charge of this, as it was his stronghold that was the center of the Dark Eden, the one projecting this shroud around the land. And the shroud was gradually expanding. Who knows how far this Dark Eden could have spread? It could have spread over all of Nosgoth, for all we know. But it is pretty interesting to note is that Anacroth is the alchemist. He's the nature guardian. He's the one who's got all this lab equipment, and he's been known for experimenting with shit that he really shouldn't be experimenting with. As a pillar guardian of states, he is able to modify things. Like, he can turn someone into liquid. He could turn someone into a solid. He could do whatever he wants. This is his magical craft. This is what he guards. But then you mix his power with the guardian of nature, which would be Bane, the guardian of the pillar of nature. This is where you get that perversion, that twisting, where all of a sudden water turns into lava. Now you've got it where a deer turns into a monstrous slug that oozes out spikes. This is where you have all this crazy shit come into play. Now, the 3rd pillar guardian is Dejul, the guardian of energy. Now, I believe her energy was more or less the one that was fueling the ever-increasing expansion of this shield. This is all theories as to what it is each guardian's power played to make this into a reality. But it makes sense that this is probably what they did. The nature guardian and the guardian of states mix their powers to distort creatures and perverse nature. And then you got the one of energy who is making and expanding the magnitude of their spells, just simply making it grander, giving it the energy to expand the world. After all, there's no limit to their power. Now, this is where it gets interesting, is that this more or less speaks to the corruption of the Guardians. These 3 Guardians in particular are already corrupted. So this crazy fucking idea goes against their very founding, their very nature. Their whole point is to defend these things. Defend nature, defend the states, defend the energy. But yet here they are perverting it, using it for their own gains, their own scientific curiosity to create the Dark Eden. Now, the Dark Eden has essentially wiped out most of the life in it. Any human that exists is turned into these weird zombie-looking people where they're spitting out acid out of their mouths. And then the monsters that exist, like any sort of wildlife, would be mutated to high hell if they don't die from the mutations. This is where it kind of gets a little realistic, where there's only so much your body could take as far as mutations before you just die. So whatever does live and mutates, who knows if it can reproduce? It may not be able to. We don't know. We don't get that much in it. But it's really fascinating when you see some of the trees and the plants start to become carnivorous. They start to become hostile to everybody. Now, after Legacy of Kain 1, where Kain kills all 3 of the Guardians, the area still stays, believe it or not. The corruption, the power that they put into the very soil of this land is forever there. It's been stated in the video game Nosgoth, again a canceled game, that some human tribes hesitantly migrated here to flee from the vampire persecution, but in coming there, they have invited the corruption of the land into themselves, and it's actually caused some interesting side effects. You see, this area started to become an area that I know of very, very well in Warhammer Fantasy, where essentially it is a land that is so tainted spiritually, magically, and physically that no real life can exist unless it gets badly mutated. This has, of course, affected the human populace and has affected just about everything. Now, the new humans who move here, the ones who are running away from Kain's empire, they started to become more nomadic. They started to become more colder, more harsher. And it's a little interesting is that they get this sort of spiritual corruption where they just no longer care for what it is that their deeds are doing. They don't care that they are hurting other people. And it actually gets really funny is that there becomes these women, this all-women organization that forms, and they start to worship Anakroth the alchemist because in their own corrupt, twisted minds, he was the greatest human ever because he discovered resources to hurt vampires. After all, these women use alchemy to create bombs. Now, of course, they worship alchemy in a weird sense. They worship it in a sense of destruction, not in the sense of preservation or healing like it should have been. And then we get it where the beast masters exist. These are men who are able to tame these mutated monsters and make it where they can submit to their will. But yet, how they do so is obviously through mutated magical means. They establish these links with these creatures that's just unnatural. It's a perversion of nature. And they also worship the Pillar Guardians in charge of the Dark Eden. It's very interesting what the Dark Eden has done to the world. Now, before I end the video here, so now you guys know what the Dark Eden is, it's just perversion, this curtain of just madness and insanity that was slowly going to engulf the world. Let me just say this. I really love the Dark Eden. It was just such a fascinating idea, because you have to remember the biblical implications of this. Mind you, I'm atheist, but I have read the Bible. And the Garden of Eden was supposed to have bountiful life of all types. Life that even today we don't know of because there's that much life. So much of it that today we would never see that much of variety, that much different types of plants, different types of animals. And here's the Dark Eden. And it is, sure, bereft of life, but what life exists is not the same. It's all variety. You got a slug monster that has spikes on it that tries to devour its victims. You've got humans that are spraying these nasty poison blood all over their victims. It's just disgusting and terrible, but yet so intriguing, so fucking metal, so badass. So, this has been it for me. This has been Free 700. I hope you guys are going to vote again next time as we hold up another poll as to what next to cover. And as always, comment down below what you guys would like to see next. There's always some stuff to talk about Legacy of Kain. It's just, this time I felt like discovering and discussing the location of the Dark Eden, because I wish for it to return. I wish to see more of it. I wish to see humans badly mutated where they get 3 arms or 4 arms and they are just fucked up facially, like they got 2 heads. I would just love to see more of this. Besides that, has been Free 700. I'm out. See you guys next time.